governor of Wisconsin, could pardon him. However, he refuses to do so. Now, understand that based on Scott Walker's statements on this issue, it's very clear that he, A, knows very little about the situation, and B, doesn't really care much to learn or investigate Stephen Avery's conviction. However, here's what he had to say. He says, I don't believe we should undermine the criminal justice system, and this is a prime example. Stephen Avery was convicted by a jury of his peers for brutal rape and murder of a 25-year-old, he says girl, but it was a woman. 25-year-old people are either men or women. The Court of Appeals heard his appeal, and the state Supreme Court heard his appeal. He's gone through all the processes. Okay, so here's the thing. It frustrates me because he doesn't want to undermine the work of prosecutors. He feels that that's the wrong thing to do. There are lots of crooked prosecutors out there. There are lots of people who have been either pardoned or exonerated for wrongful convictions. Okay, so for you to say, like, I don't want to undermine the prosecutors, well, I think that in and of itself is a miscarriage of justice. There's supposed to be certain checks and balances in place to ensure that, you know, you right the wrongs of some officials. And if you watch that documentary series, there were lots of terrible things that went on that led to this conviction.
So there's a reason why a pardon exists in our system. It's one, if you have a crooked prosecutor, it's a check and balance that Anna talked about. But two, what if you made a mistake? There wasn't a crooked prosecutor. You just had the wrong guy. You had the wrong evidence. And then, for example, DNA evidence later has proven many cases we just simply had wrong. That's the reason why you have this system. Or maybe you punish the person, but you punish them way too harshly, and society has changed now and goes, hey, wait a minute, we rethought that issue. There's a reason why the pardon exists. To me, the more outrageous thing that Scott Walker said was the other quote. He said, I have made it my practice for the last 5 years to not issue pardons.
Yep.
I don't believe we should undermine the criminal justice system, and this is a prime example. No, but what you're saying is, I refuse to do my job. Part of your job is to issue pardons. Now, it's not to say that you must issue pardons. Maybe you could, it's feasible, possible, I suppose, that you could look at the thousands of cases that come across a governor's desk and decide none of them are worthwhile, right? But you're at least supposed to do your job and read them.
Yes.
You're supposed to look at them. You're supposed to look at the evidence and go, okay, that makes sense. That doesn't make sense. I'm going to use my judgment and the power vested in me by the good people of Wisconsin. You're not supposed to go, that's kind of a pain in the ass. I'm tough on crime, even on the innocent. I'm super tough on the innocent. So pardons, cases, who cares? I'm not reading them. I'm never issuing a pardon. And that's a dereliction of duty. That's outrageous.
It is outrageous. And the fact that he has no interest in looking in this case is the part that outrages me the most. Like, God, look, this is a huge spoiler alert. If you haven't watched the documentary series, I guess stop listening to what we're about to say. But there's one portion that shows, like, one big piece of evidence that the prosecution had was that Stephen Avery's blood was in Teresa Halbach's truck, right? Mm-hmm. So the defense attorneys went to the county because they knew there was a vial of blood belonging to Stephen Avery there. Because remember, he was already wrongfully convicted of a rape that he did not do. He was wrongfully convicted. So the county already had some DNA of him, the vial of blood. They found that the vial of blood had been punctured. Someone had fucked with the vial of blood, okay? Mm-hmm. So it's very likely that they, planted the blood in the truck. And another thing that was interesting was that there were no handprints of Stephen Avery at all in that truck. Not a single one.
Just conveniently the blood they happen to already have.
Exactly.
Okay, next time get his handprints too if you'd like to frame him. So the follow-up question that should have been asked to Scott Walker is, we know Stephen Avery was wrongly convicted before of the rape. That has already been proven. Would you still not have pardoned him, even knowing that he was wrongly convicted? Because you said you don't do any pardons.
Richard Herman, defense attorney out of the New York City area. This has been a very big, trendy topic over the last couple of weeks. What is your take over this story?
How about Netflix? Oh, my God. People can't stop talking about this. Between Narcos and this now, I mean, that's all people talk about on Netflix. But I know people now that won't go to the state of Wisconsin anymore because of this. It just, I know one former FBI agent that tells me he can't sleep at night after watching this series. And
are you serious?
Yeah, and look, I this is the arena that I live in, and FBI and investigators, state and federal, you want to believe that they take an oath and that they're going to uphold the laws and that they're righteous and that there's integrity there and nobody's setting people up and nobody is, they're doing their job, and if the evidence isn't there, they move on. And you want to believe that, but unfortunately, so many times I've seen that that's just not the case, and I've seen witnesses be forced to testify to things that they don't know what they're talking about. They're just following a script that the government gives them, and you look at this documentary, and I don't really know if it's a documentary. Some people are calling it a defense advocacy piece. It may be that. Their purpose was not to show both sides of the coin, that's for sure. They took his position and they tried to punch as many holes in the case as they could, and it's kind of overwhelming some of the deficiencies that you see here, and they're wanting you to take the leap, like for instance with the blood, that the fact that the vial was open, that this was a plant by law enforcement as revenge for him because of the first wrongful conviction, and he was suing the state. So did they go to these lengths to get this guy? I don't know. We're not going to know the true answer to this. When I hear Jeanine Pirro get on TV and start talking that, he's guilty. Pirro. Yeah, when I hear that, and I don't care if she's on Fox News, I'll watch everything. I'm on CNN, I watch Fox, I watch MSNBC, I watch every news I can get out there, to be honest with you. But when I see her get on there and vehemently say this guy is guilty, then I know he's not guilty. I just know that because she's a disgrace as far as I'm concerned, and she was as a judge and as the district attorney in Westchester and White Plains, where I'm from. She's just a disgrace. So the fact that she's out there, blabbering that this guy is absolutely guilty because there's a procedure where law enforcement are allowed to go into blood that they're holding and they're able to inject it with some sort of solution to keep it active. I can't, as you can tell, I can't stand her. But in any event, look, this series is so provocative, and it's got people thinking, and some of the things that they've brought out are so shocking to your conscience and shocking to people's belief in the judicial system that the discussion we just heard about Scott Walker is so true. I mean, here he is. Right. This may be Avery's last chance, a pardon, because I don't think that there's going to be sufficient evidence for the courts to do anything right now. It has to come from a pardon. And for him to have a blanket, I don't pardon anybody because I trust the judicial system, that is just a disgrace. And he was a disgrace as a presidential candidate. As far as I'm concerned, he's a disgrace as a governor. Why he doesn't wake up, if this man is innocent, and we don't know if Scott Avery's innocent, and there's some skeletons in his closet there that didn't come out in this documentary that I've read about. So listen, examine it. Why can't you as a governor examine it? Take a look at it. Take an independent look at it. Look at both sides of the coin. And then if you believe that this man was wrongfully convicted, or you believe he was set up, or you believe his lawyers were just horrendous, which a lot of people do believe, if you believe the lawyers were in cahoots with the prosecution, if you believe all of that and that he was set up by law enforcement as revenge, then you have the ability to pardon this guy. And if you think that there's evidence to support the conviction or not to warrant a pardon, then you don't pardon him. But at least take a look at it. This is a man's life, and whether the life is worth saving or not, the last stand is with the governor, and how he won't even look at it is just an abomination. It really is.
And in your heart of hearts, what do you think the evidence points to?
Well, look, if you go strictly by the documentary, you're just flabbergasted. You're like, you can't sleep. It's like, this is just absolutely disgraceful conduct, not from like A and C and D, but straight through the alphabet. Every step of the way, he got, just railroaded and horrible representation and just a tortured existence. And, it's appalling and it's shocking and it's very upsetting. And again, I temper it by saying I don't know. We don't know if everything in the documentary is true, and we don't know what the documentary left out that might counterbalance the position. But just from looking at the documentary, if this was a defense advocacy piece, like many people say it is, it's just beyond shocking. I mean, it's really disgusting, and it looks like a very bad setup of this guy.
Yeah, but Netflix, as you point out, is taking in the big bucks, right?
Yeah, I mean, look, he brought a lawsuit against the state for the first wrongful conviction. He got jobbed on the resolution of that, and this could have been the payback, the big payback, as James Brown says. This could have been the big payback to get this guy. And I've had cases where, it sure looked like clients were set up for me, especially in drug cases. So, does it happen? People, I have to break the bubble. I have to break the balloon. It does happen. And could it have happened here? It sure looks like it could have happened. It really does, Jordan, and it's very upsetting.
Definitely. Okay, there's some late breaking news that happened over the weekend with Bill Cosby. Let's take a listen from CNN, and then I'll get your take on the other side.
I'm Michael Smerconish. We start with breaking news, my exclusive story about comedian Bill Cosby and evidence that I believe jeopardizes the criminal case against him. You'll recall that just a few weeks ago, the famous comedian was finally hauled into court in suburban Philadelphia to face charges for sexually assaulting Temple University employee Andrea Constand. This after at least 50 different women, you see many of their faces here, all had come forward to say Bill Cosby had molested them. I have learned that this case, the only criminal charge that Cosby has ever faced, might soon fall apart. I have obtained a document that no other journalist has that could blow the case up. I talked about it a bit last night on AC 360, but now, new information. So let me back up and tell you the story. Back in 2005, the then District Attorney of Montgomery County, Pennsylvania, Bruce Castor, was investigating Andrea Constad's case. Castor has said he wanted to prosecute Bill Cosby, but believed he did not have enough evidence to sustain criminal charges beyond a reasonable doubt. Still, he thought that Constad might get justice in a civil suit, and he claims he made an unusual deal to create an atmosphere where she could get that justice. The DA told the comedian's attorney, essentially, I won't prosecute your client if you promise that he'll testify fully in a civil case. Cosby's attorney allegedly agreed. It was a deal. In the deposition, Cosby admits he had sexual relationships with at least 5 women outside his marriage, gave prescription sedatives to women he wanted to have sex with, and tried to hide affairs from his wife. Cosby says he gave Constad 1.5 tablets of Benadryl, an over-the-counter antihistamine that can cause drowsiness, to relieve stress. He said that the sex and drug taking were always consensual. Why would Cosby testify so openly? Because allegedly he believed it would never be used against him in a criminal court. The civil case against Cosby was settled, and the deposition remained sealed for many years, but then, last year, a judge decided to release a transcript of it. And the explosive charges Cosby faces now are largely based on that transcript, which we now know could very well be thrown out of court when the case has a hearing on February 2nd. In the last few days, I obtained an email, this email that I confirmed was written by ex-DA Bruce Castor to his successor last year, 3 months before the charge against Cosby. Only those involved in the case have seen this email until now. It's the only clear record of the deal that was made promising not to prosecute Bill Cosby. And here's an excerpt. Castor wrote, I can see no possibility that Cosby's deposition could be used in a state criminal case because I would have to testify as to what happened, and the deposition would be subject to suppression. I cannot believe any state court judge would allow that deposition into evidence. Knowing this, unless you can make out a case without that deposition, and without anything the deposition led you to, I think Cosby would have an action against the county and maybe even against you personally. Bruce Castor has been subpoenaed to appear at the hearing on February 2nd, at which time I believe the case could fall apart.
Okay, Richard, what is your take on this late-breaking email, which apparently says that Cosby wouldn't be prosecuted